Hello, my name is Eric Atkins, and this is part one of a video lecture entitled Living with Technology, a Theology and Ethics of Technology. This video lecture is for the course Church, Society, and Ethical Issues at the East Asia School of Theology. Today, we live in a world profoundly influenced by technology. The vast majority of people interact with technology on a daily basis, indeed, almost moment to moment. This is especially true since the advent of smartphones and social media. Upon waking up, the very first thing countless people do is check their phones for any messages that might have come in while they were sleeping. Throughout the day, people are on their phones, whether they're texting, reading and sending emails, watching videos, or playing video games. And the last thing many people do just before they go to sleep is to check their phones one last time. While smartphones are probably the most common technology most people interact with these days, we interact with all kinds of technologies throughout the day. The list is almost endless. Light bulbs that illuminate our homes and offices, refrigerators that help preserve our foods, sinks for washing pots and pans, and showers for washing our bodies, cars and buses for traveling to work, school, shopping, or eating establishments, elevators and escalators for moving up and down tall buildings or going underground, computers for doing all kinds of work at home, school, and in offices. And the list just goes on and on and on. On a personal note, my own life has been profoundly affected by technology. I was born deaf, and I have been wearing hearing aids since I was 18 months old, practically my whole life. Without hearing aids, my life would have been very, very different, and my opportunities in life would likely have been very limited. Thanks to the gift of technology, I have been able to live a more or less normal life with the freedom to choose almost any job I want, the freedom to choose who I want to marry, and the freedom to choose where I live. Technology has been incredibly beneficial in my own life. However, technology has also led to many negative impacts, which we'll look at later in this video lecture. This video lecture consists of two parts. In the first video lecture, I will provide a very, very brief history of technology, followed by an examination of various ethical issues related to technology. In the second video, I will apply biblical and ethical principles to help us develop a theology and ethics of technology that I hope will help us to better interact with technology today and in the future. So let's dive into the history of technology. Technology has existed as long as humans have existed. The earliest known tools were made from wood and stones, including spears, arrows, and axes. As humans spread throughout the world and developed culture, they began using new materials and learned new techniques for creating new tools and improving already existing tools. This is why early history is often named after the materials used for creating new tools, instruments, and weapons. The Stone Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. During the Middle Ages, technology continued to improve and new inventions appeared, including the printing press, which was first developed in China and eventually made its way to Europe. The compass, also first developed in China, which proved to be a great aid to navigation, especially for navigating across oceans. Gunpowder, which was also developed in China, and gunpowder eventually made its way to Europe, where it had a remarkable impact. Eyeglasses. Eyeglasses were first invented in Italy, and they helped double the years monks could work copying the Bible and other books. So they were invented first in monasteries by monks. Windmills. Windmills were also first developed in China and eventually spread to Europe. And then there's the heavy plow. The heavy plow was adopted in Europe around 1000. The heavy plow allowed more land to be opened up for farming and led to better crop yields. With the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in England around 1750, the pace of technological change greatly increased, leading to a host of profound social changes. The pace of technology quickened still further in the 19th and 20th centuries until today. The speed of technological change seems almost overwhelming. The point I'm trying to make with this very brief history of technology is to say that we humans have been creating and using technology for thousands of years. Just as globalization is not a new phenomenon, technology is also not a new thing, nor are the questions and issues that arise from technology. Now that we've covered a very brief history of technology, let's consider various ethical issues related to technology, especially in the 21st century. The following are just some of the ethical issues raised by today's technology. The first of these is internet fraud and cybercrime. Unscrupulous people are taking advantage of technology to engage in various fraudulent activities centered around the theft of personal data. For example, there have been numerous data leaks involving people's debit and credit card information. Related to this are scam calls that seek to solicit debit and credit card information from unsuspecting individuals, including senior citizens. This kind of fraudulent activity is not limited to attempts to access personal data of individuals. Some hackers create software programs known as ransomware to force school districts, hospitals, corporations, and government agencies to pay them ransom in exchange for the deletion of these ransomware programs, which are designed to prevent normal digital operations within these organizations, often crippling their ability to function in any meaningful way. The next problem I want to mention are cyber attacks. Nor is cybercrime limited to theft of personal data or ransomware attacks. Many actors, including nation states and terrorists, are involved in cyber attacks in which attempts are made to infiltrate government and utility computer networks to either gather restricted information or to disrupt normal operations. For example, some terrorists seek the names of soldiers involved in anti-terrorist operations so they can intimidate these soldiers with threats to scare them into not participating in future counterterrorism activity. Others may seek to hack into computer networks controlling such critical infrastructure as electricity, air traffic control systems, defense systems that rely on satellites or radar, water treatment systems, and even traffic signals to launch hostile attacks aimed at creating chaos or even destruction in targeted cities or nations. In some cases, cyber attacks may lead to real consequences, as was the case with the Stuxnet virus, which was a computer worm jointly created by American and Israeli intelligence and designed to disable a key part of Iran's nuclear weapons program. Stuxnet succeeded in causing damage to the Iranian centrifuges that were used to enrich uranium, thereby setting back Iran's nuclear weapons program by at least 2 years. The next problem I want to mention is fake news. Another form of cyber warfare involved the creation and dissemination of fake news. In past conflicts, propaganda was used in an attempt to manipulate the public opinion of citizens in various nations. Today, propaganda efforts are far more sophisticated thanks to advances in television and the spread of social media. We need to distinguish between two types of fake news: misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation is the passing on of wrong information, often unwittingly, by those who don't know better. Misinformation usually does not involve malicious intent. Then there's disinformation. This is the creation and dissemination of deliberately false information. This is done with malicious intent, often to interfere with democratic elections, undermine the willpower of nations deemed to be enemies, or to stir up conflict within certain populations. And by the way, propaganda isn't necessarily wrong. Propaganda simply refers to any attempt to persuade someone else to accept your particular narrative or point of view. Preaching, for example, is propaganda. However, the word propaganda has negative connotations because of how this word has been used over the past 100 years or so. Once unleashed, fake news is often difficult to stop. Like real-world viruses, fake news and fake information can often mutate, taking on different forms in response to various attempts at fact-checking or debunking wrong information. In today's world, much wisdom and discernment is required to distinguish between true and false information. Then there is what I call algorithmic myopia. In its most basic form, an algorithm is simply a decision tree or a program that is designed to help computer programs to carry out certain tasks or to know what to do. As algorithms have become more sophisticated, many companies are now using algorithms to personalize the content that people consume on various media platforms, including YouTube, Facebook, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Spotify, and podcast providers. Questions arise as to whether these curated selections truly do improve users' experience on these platforms, or whether these algorithms contribute to a narrowing of interests and perspectives. These algorithms typically analyze videos, movies, and songs the user has consumed, and then offers suggestions for similar content. For example, one user might enjoy watching romance movies, while another user might enjoy action adventure shows. Algorithms will take note of these choices and suggest more romance movies for the romance movie enthusiast, or more action adventure TV series for the viewer who enjoys watching those kinds of shows. Should algorithms continue to reinforce users' preferences, or should they encourage users to explore new content? This becomes especially problematic when news reports and politics are involved. Over the past few decades, so-called echo chambers on social media platforms have led to increasing polarization in the political views of people in many different countries, thereby potentially making it more difficult to reach consensus on political and social issues and contributing to greater hostility between those who hold different political, religious, and social values. This is of great concern to many in a world that is characterized by widespread pluralism, in which people who hold radically different worldviews must find some way to live peacefully with one another. Another concern related to algorithmic programming concerns the possibility of using algorithms to conceal, legitimize, strengthen, or continue unjust biases. Then there is the question of using technology to control. In addition to concerns about the use of technology to shape people's opinions in potentially harmful ways, there are concerns that surveillance technology could be used in nefarious ways to control people's movements, purchases, and access to opportunities. Many countries already have extensive surveillance equipment, which can easily be used for controlling the everyday lives of citizens, as is the case in China. Under the, quote, right circumstances, other nations could easily use their own surveillance technology to control the everyday lives of their citizens. In extreme circumstances, this could lead to the jailing and even execution of people for criticizing the government or engaging in activities deemed subversive to the government, such as holding worship services or Bible studies. In Iran, for example, surveillance cameras are used to identify women who do not wear veils in accordance with Islamic practice. Nor is concern about surveillance technology limited to national governments. Many companies also use surveillance technologies to monitor the activities of their employees. In certain countries, such practices are viewed as invading employees' privacy. Many companies respond that they have a right to monitor their employees at work, since employees' actions can affect their employer's profitability. In the wrong hands, such technology could lead to the creation of a dystopian society, such as the one depicted in George Orwell's classic science fiction novel, 1984. Related to reservations about surveillance technology are concerns about the use of technology to control people's lives in general. Many worry that advanced technology makes it far easier to concentrate too much power in the hands of very few people. For example, many people are worried that tech billionaires such as Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk, and companies such as Amazon, Google, and Facebook already have too much power to shape how people think and act. While some worry that today's technology concentrates too much power in the hands of only a few people, others worry that tomorrow's technology could concentrate too much power in the virtual hands of computers themselves. This is an old fear, one that has been the subject of many science fiction movies, such as the Terminator series starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, or I, Robot, starring Will Smith, based on the novel of the same name by Isaac Asimov. In these and other movies, robots attempt to take over the world, and humans must fight back to save the human race. However, the fear that robots will take over the world goes far beyond science fiction movies, with highly respected people, including the late Stephen Hawking, Bill Gates, Steve Wozniak, and even Elon Musk, warning that AI could potentially end the human race. Their concern is that once AI reaches singularity, that is, the moment when AI technology will exceed human intelligence, at that moment, AI could decide that the most logical or optimal course of action is to destroy the entire human race. Given that many environmentalists view humans as parasites on the global ecosystem, it's easy to see how any AI program with similar environmental sensibilities might conclude that the best way to save the planet is to exterminate humanity altogether. There is considerable debate about whether robots and AI constitute an existential threat to humanity or not, with those opposed to the doomsayers arguing that far from dooming humanity, AI will bring tremendous benefit to all of us. Even if there's no danger that robots and AI will decide to wipe out the human race, there is considerable danger as autonomous computer systems become ever more advanced. This is particularly true in the area of military technology. With the advent of drones, considerable attention has been given to the prospect of lethal autonomous weapons systems, LAWS, which are weapons that do not require humans to be physically present for them to attack enemy targets. This includes aerial drones, sea-based drones, and even robot tanks. For example, Ukraine recently undertook a military offensive against Russia, which marked the first time any nation used only autonomous weapons on the battlefield. Concerns about laws center around the question of how much involvement humans will have in controlling autonomous weapons. The general consensus among ethicists, policymakers, and military officials is that human soldiers must be involved in any decision made by an autonomous weapon to use lethal force. However, the problem is that technology is advancing so rapidly that it could soon be possible for autonomous weapons to identify, target, and kill enemy combatants entirely without any input from humans at all. On a slightly different note, but still related to machine autonomy, is the fear that automation will lead to the widespread loss of jobs. For example, many complain that self-checkout counters at grocery stores take away jobs from human clerks, although I think the real unspoken complaint is that many prefer the human interaction that comes with having their items scanned by human clerks. Nevertheless, there are very real worries that automation will lead to many people losing their jobs as machines become more and more sophisticated. For example, many small to medium-sized businesses in America are now switching to automation in manufacturing, partly in an effort to reduce accidents caused by employees who are addicted to drugs. However, past generations have experienced this kind of change. For example, when telephone companies in the 1930s inaugurated machines that automatically connected phone calls, tens of thousands of telephone operators lost their jobs. Studies show that many telephone operators below age 25 did worse a decade after being laid off. However, most of those who were 25 and over were able to find jobs as typists and secretaries with similar wages. While automation has historically hurt some, especially those who are beginning their careers, others have been able to find other jobs at competitive wages. This suggests that similar outcomes will be seen as current technology advances and automation leads to job losses. We can expect negative impact for some workers, while others will be able to move into new jobs at similar wages. Hollywood and other creative industries, however, are deeply concerned about the effect that automation will have on their careers. This was an important issue, though not the main issue, behind the Writers Guild of America strike of 2023, in which screenwriters expressed concern that AI programs were already being used to write the scripts of movies and TV shows, which posed a direct threat to their livelihood. So far, we've looked at ethical issues that might be considered external issues, in that these problems can easily be framed in terms of what's happening out there. But let's examine what we might call internal issues related to technology. These are ethical concerns that focus on how technology is changing our souls. This is not to say that the other issues we've looked at earlier do not affect our souls, but the issues that follow are far more directly related to our spiritual lives. The first of these is pornography. Hard data on internet pornography is difficult to pin down, and the data on this particular slide is more than 10 years old, but it still gives an indication of the scale of this issue. According to this chart, only 4% of internet websites are dedicated to pornography, although other estimates suggest as much as 12% of the internet features pornography. But when we look at web searches for pornography, we see that 13% of all web searches are for pornographic content, while 20% of web searches on smartphones seek pornography. When surveying respondents on the question of how often they view pornography on the internet, though, that figure shoots up to 87% of men and 28.5% of women admitting they view pornography at least once a week. As I've said, these figures are more than 10 years old and may be higher now. Pornography is harmful in many ways, including damaging relationships, causing sexual dysfunction, promoting mental health issues such as anxiety, loneliness, and poor self-esteem, and engaging in risky sexual behavior. But perhaps the most alarming aspect of pornography is that it fuels sex trafficking, including the sex trafficking of children. The next issue I want to talk about is the monetization of attention. For many companies involved in providing internet content, there is a strong incentive to encourage users to stay online as long as possible. By doing so, they can increase their revenues. They do this through advertising and tactics designed to increase user engagement. One strategy for increasing user engagement is to encourage outrage. This often involves posting news headlines designed to provoke emotional reactions and encourage users to click links to these news stories. In addition, many social media platforms include sections where users can leave personal comments about videos, pictures, and other posts. While healthy debate is important for maintaining democracy, in many cases, those who create social media content often post material that is deliberately controversial in the hopes of garnering more views, more likes, and more shares. While it is right to feel outrage about certain injustices, the deliberate manipulation of outrage is problematic. Not only does the use of outrage as a business model lead to greater conflict between different social, political, religious, and ethnic groups, but the habit of often expressing outrage can lead to an attitude of hostility towards others, including coworkers, those who were once close friends, neighbors, and even family members. Another problem caused by social media is the spread of what has been termed social contagions. According to my web browser's AI, social contagion is the spontaneous spread of behaviors, emotions, or attitudes within a group or network. Examples of social contagion include the recent increase in the number of Americans who identify as LGBTQ+, rising from under 4% in 2012 to 9.3% in 2025. There is debate about what's behind this dramatic rise, but one possible explanation is that the internet has made the LGBTQ+ lifestyle far more popular than it was previously. Another example of social contagion is the religious deconstruction movement, in which people leave the faith of their youth after questioning the faith teachings they received while growing up. According to the research firm Barna, overall, 42% of adults say they have deconstructed the faith of their youth. Of today's Christians, it's 37%, with little difference whether they're practicing 36% or non-practicing 37% Christians. And I might add that this research concerns people, Christians in America. Once again, there are many possible reasons behind this trend, but one could argue that the easy availability of alternate perspectives, including atheistic perspectives, on the internet has contributed significantly to the number of people deconstructing from the faith of their childhood. One more example of social contagion is the dramatic rise in hopelessness among young people. According to Derek Thomas in an article in Atlantic, from 2009 to 2021, the rate of American high school students who say they feel persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness rose from 26% to 44%. This is the highest level of teenage sadness ever recorded. Almost every measure of mental health is getting worse for every teenage demographic, and it's happening all across the country. Internet use has been identified as contributing to this epidemic of hopelessness. While consumption of social media by itself might not be the problem, it is a problem when it replaces activities young people once enjoyed, including hanging out with friends or playing sports. In some countries where driving cars is an important life skill, many young people are either delaying getting a driver's license or refusing to get one at all. Through their use of the internet, many young people are being exposed to many of the world's problems, including wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, climate change, and chaotic decisions being made by various government and business leaders. This sense of hopelessness is also contributing to an alarming rise in suicide among young people. In 2022, the United States had a suicide rate of 14.2 per 100,000. This means there were almost twice as many suicides as homicide in the United States that year. Although suicide rates have declined in Singapore in recent years, suicide remains the leading cause of death among young Singaporeans aged 10 to 29. Suicide rates in other Asian countries include 31 per 100,000 in South Korea, 18 per 100,000 in Mongolia, 17.5 per 100,000 in Japan, 13.3 per 100,000 in India, 12 per 100,000 in Thailand, and 9.2 per 100,000 in China. So, in this first video lecture, we've looked at a very brief history of technology, and then we've looked at a broad range of ethical issues related to technology. In our second video lecture, we're going to see if we can craft a theology and ethical approach that will help us to better navigate these and many other issues related to technology. So please take a break and then go to part 2 of this video lecture.